I'm Rick Wilson, a social scientist in the Department of Political Science at Rice University. It's widely observed that Americans decreasingly trust one another. When asked a general question about whether they trust others, social scientists find that generalized trust has steadily declined over the last 30 years. When asked whom do citizens trust, political scientists find that elected officials are trusted at much lower rates than scientists, or even college professors. These survey measures of trust are problematic in that respondents may not have a specific target in mind. For example, if I'm asked about whether most people can be trusted, who should I be thinking about? My neighbors, my colleagues, some random person off the street? I'm likely to trust different people for different reasons and at different rates. Moreover, there are two parts to trust and they're related. My decision to trust someone is not made in a vacuum. It has a lot to do with assessing whether the person I'm trusting is trustworthy. When I trust, I put myself in the hands of another. If that person is trustworthy, then trust is reciprocated. The point is that trust rarely occurs in isolation. There have been a lot of studies that have carefully measured trust and trustworthiness. A recent study by Elaine Cohn and colleagues, for example, focuses on the latter. The research team dropped more than 17,000 wallets on streets around the world. The wallets contained varying amounts of money and included information identifying the owner. The team recorded the percentage of wallets that were returned. While there was wide variation across countries, ranging from a low of 20% in China to a high of 80% in Denmark, the upshot is that people are trustworthy, and the variation is systematically linked to the countries. The question my co-authors and I pose is different. We asked to what extent do citizens trust their public officials? Most of the work on this question simply asks people about their attitudes. We're not happy with this approach. Instead, we make it costly for people to trust and to be trustworthy. We carry out an experiment on both citizens and public officials. The basics of the experiment is simple. Individuals have to make choices both as a trustor and a trustee. Later on, they're randomly assigned to one role or the other. In both roles, they're given an endowment of $30. As a truster, they can send any $10 increment to a trustee. Whatever is sent, we triple, and that amount is given to the trustee. For example, if $20 is sent, the truster then has $10, and the trustee has $60 from the tripled amount plus $30 from the endowment. The trustee is then asked how much he or she wants to return to the truster. Since no one knows what role they'll be assigned, trustees have to decide how much to return for each $10 increment sent. The first part of the experiment was carried out within groups. Citizens were asked to make this decision and knew that they would be randomly assigned a role and paired with someone in the same room. We did the same for groups of public officials, both elected and appointed. In the second part of the experiment, it was announced that citizens would now make a choice as trusters. They were told that they would be randomly matched with public officials. Public officials were told that they would make choices about what to return to citizens with whom they would be randomly paired. Everyone was assured that no one would know the identity of their counterpart. They were also reminded they would be paid in cash for their combined choices. Participants then first gained experience with both kinds of choices. In this first part of the experiment, I measured the degree to which people trust and are trustworthy when interacting with one another. In the second part, I measure the extent to which citizens trust their public officials. What did I find? First, citizens trust one another a good deal. Over a third sent everything to another citizen. Public officials, when knowing that they'd be paired with one another, sent even more. Over half sent everything. What happens when citizens and public officials are paired? There's a slight decline in trust, but citizens expect their public officials to be trustworthy and are willing to trust them. Does trust pay? Both citizens and public officials, when interacting with one another, reciprocate that trust. The average amount that individuals say they're willing to return is above the break-even point for each amount sent. Well, what about when citizens are paired with public officials? Well, once again, trust is rewarded, and on average, more is returned than sent. What's the upshot of this research? The good news is that democracy is not dead. Citizens trust their public officials, and that trust is reciprocated. Being willing to trust others to act in your interest is part of the glue that holds a democracy together.